The morning sun bathed the quiet streets of a small town in the countryside where the pace of life was calm and people knew each other by name. Modest houses lined narrow streets with well-kept gardens and welcoming porches. It was a close-knit community where everyone seemed to know each other's lives, for better or for worse. On that Saturday morning, the usual buzz of conversations in the local bakery was interrupted by the soft rumble of a powerful engine. A luxurious, shiny, and modern car stood out completely against the town's peaceful scene. Curious eyes turned to the vehicle that slowly advanced down the main street, as if the driver were reminiscing about every detail of the place. At the wheel was a woman in her early 30s, with wavy brown hair and piercing eyes, partially hidden by stylish dark sunglasses. Her posture exuded confidence, but anyone looking closely would notice a slight tremor in her hands gripping the steering wheel. She took a deep breath, feeling her heart race as she approached her destination. The car headed towards the most affluent part of town, where the Albuquerque mansion was located, the most expensive and imposing house in the area, which had been for sale for years. The woman parked in front of the property and got out of the car with determined steps. The neighbors, curious, watched from afar, trying to figure out who this mysterious woman was, who seemed to have the money to buy a property of that size. When the real estate agent arrived, she wasted no time. She signed the papers and transferred the full amount for the house without hesitation. The agent, impressed, could hardly believe it. "She bought the Albuquerque mansion," he announced to everyone nearby. The news spread quickly, and soon the entire town knew that a rich and mysterious woman had acquired the most valuable property in the area. But the real shock came when she finally removed her sunglasses. It was Riley, the girl who had been accused of theft 10 years ago, and whom everyone thought would never return. Riley had been accused of stealing the valuable jewels of the Albuquerque family, for whom she worked as a nanny. At the time, her family had bought a used truck, the result of years of savings, so that Robert, her father, could work with deliveries and improve the household income. However, when the jewels disappeared, rumors began to spread. Many in the town speculated that the money for the truck had come from the alleged theft, ignoring the explanations from Amelia and Robert that they had scraped together every penny from years of hard work. The scandal was immense. In a small town where gossip spread like wildfire, the accusation took on a life of its own. Even without concrete evidence, Riley was judged and condemned by public opinion. Her family, once respected and cherished, was dragged into the eye of the storm. Robert, a dedicated pastor, and Amelia, a woman known for her kindness and generosity, saw their reputations destroyed overnight. Neighbors who once greeted them with smiles now crossed the street to avoid them. Longtime friends stopped visiting their home, and even the church where Robert had preached for years excluded them from its activities. The humiliation was overwhelming. Riley, seeing her parents suffering and feeling the weight of injustice, decided she could no longer stay in the town. She left quietly, without saying where she was going, hoping that her absence might ease the pain for those she loved. But for many in the town, her departure was seen as a confession of guilt. If she wasn't guilty, why would she run away? They said to each other, ignoring the fact that Riley had nowhere else to go but away from the life that had been shattered. Amelia and Robert continued living there, trying to survive in a community that had turned its back on them. Even so, they kept in touch with Riley over the phone, following her journey of rebuilding from afar. They knew she was doing well, but the physical and emotional distance was a wound that never fully healed. No one in town could understand how Riley, who had left as a young woman accused of theft and worked as a babysitter, was now back with so much money. Speculations were diverse. Some thought it was illicit money, others believed she had married someone wealthy. But the truth was that Riley had rebuilt her life from scratch. After leaving town, she moved to a distant metropolis, where she started working in modest jobs while studying at night. Her interest in digital marketing arose almost by chance, but soon turned into a passion. Over time, Riley secured an internship at a marketing agency and climbed the career ladder with determination, becoming one of the most respected consultants in the company. Her campaigns helped numerous brands achieve success, and her reputation in the professional field solidified. After buying the mansion, Riley drove to her parents' house. The small light blue house with its simple garden surrounded by flowers that Amelia always tended with such care seemed even more humble next to the luxurious car Riley parked on the street. Riley stood for a moment, looking at the facade that held so many memories. The house where she grew up, where she played in the garden, celebrated birthdays, and lived many happy moments before everything went wrong. A lump formed in her throat, but she took a deep breath and walked to the door. The neighbours, always attentive, peered through the windows, curious to know who was that elegant woman who seemed so out of place on that simple street. Before Riley could knock, the door opened. Amelia was there, still wearing an apron stained with flour, as if she was in the middle of preparing something in the kitchen. She froze upon seeing her daughter, her eyes instantly filling with tears. "Riley?" she whispered, as if she feared her daughter was an illusion. "Hi, Mum," Riley replied, her voice choked with emotion. Amelia didn't hesitate. She opened her arms and pulled her daughter into a tight embrace, as if wanting to make sure she was real. Robert appeared behind her, his face marked by time but lit up by a smile that hadn't been seen in years. "Daughter," he said, his voice hoarse with emotion, as he joined the embrace. It had been years since Riley had seen her parents in person. They spoke on the phone, it's true, but it was different. The physical distance had created a gap that only a tight hug could fill. Riley felt the weight of a decade of absence dissolve in that moment, as tears ran freely down everyone's faces. Inside the house, Riley looked around. The living room was practically the same. The worn but comfortable sofa, the floral curtains that Amelia loved so much, the family photographs on the walls, including one of herself as a teenager, smiling at the camera. It was as if time had stopped there, waiting for her. She sat on the sofa, feeling both small and big at the same time, as if the house was hugging her and saying, "You are home." "I bought the Albuquerque mansion," Riley said, breaking the silence. Amelia and Robert looked at her, confused. "But it's not for me. It's for you." Amelia shook her head, the tears returning. "We can't accept this, daughter. It's too much." "You deserve it," Riley insisted, holding her mother's hands. "You spent years suffering because of me, being treated as if you were guilty too. This house is a way to show that you should never have been humiliated." She also knew they wouldn't leave town easily. It was the place where they both grew up, and over the years they had made new friends and had their family there. Then, Riley revealed what really brought her back. "A few months ago I received an email from Thomas Albuquerque," she began, her voice firm but filled with emotion. "He admitted that he was the one who stole the jewels. He had gambling debts and was desperate. When the jewels disappeared and everyone accused me, he stayed silent, letting me take the blame." Amelia and Robert sat in silence for a moment, processing the words. Robert was the first to speak. "So, you are free, finally?" Riley nodded, her eyes shining. "Yes, Dad. I'm free, and I want you to be free as well. That's why I bought the mansion, so you can live with dignity, away from the bad memories that this town brought." Amelia hugged her daughter again, this time with a smile of relief and gratitude. Robert squeezed Riley's shoulder, proud and emotional. "You were always strong, my dear. But now you have given us more than a house. You have given us peace." The news of Thomas's confession and Riley's return spread through the town like wildfire. Within days, everyone knew that the girl they had unjustly condemned was back, and not as a fugitive, but as a woman who had triumphed over all adversity. Amelia and Robert moved into the Albuquerque mansion, and the whole town watched the move with a mix of admiration and shame. Gradually, the people who had once avoided them began to reconnect, apologizing and trying to make amends. Riley watched everything with a mix of satisfaction and melancholy. She knew that she could not completely erase the suffering of the past, but she was determined to ensure a better future for her parents and herself. The Albuquerque mansion, now home to Amelia and Robert, had become a refuge of peace and comfort. The years of humiliation and exclusion seemed distant, like a storm that had finally passed. On a quiet afternoon, while helping her mother organize the mansion's kitchen, Riley paused for a moment and looked around. Amelia was happy, with a sparkle in her eyes that Riley hadn't seen for years. Robert, sitting in the living room, was reading a book in a comfortable armchair, something he never had time to do before. The house was full of life, with fresh flowers in the vases and the smell of homemade bread coming from the oven. "You did this for us, daughter," Amelia said, breaking the silence. "But what about you? What are you going to do now?" Riley smiled, placing a hand on her mother's shoulder. "I have my life in the big city, Mum. My work, my projects. But I promise I will always visit. And maybe someday I can divide my time between there and here." Robert looked up from the book and gazed at his daughter. "We just want you to be happy, Riley, and to know that no matter where you are, you will always have a home here." Riley felt a wave of gratitude and peace. The journey had been long and painful, but finally she felt she was on the right path. It wasn't about revenge or ostentation. It was about healing, forgiveness, and new beginnings. She had learned that the past couldn't be changed, but the future was a blank page, ready to be written. As the days passed, Riley reflected on what the story had taught her. The injustice she had suffered did not define her. On the contrary, she had used that pain as fuel to become the strong and resilient person she was today. And now, seeing her parents living with dignity and happiness, she understood that true success was not in money or recognition, but in the ability to transform pain into something positive. The town, which had once unjustly condemned her, now had the chance to redeem itself. Riley held no grudges. She knew that forgiveness was the key to moving forward, not just for others, but for herself. And contrary to what many thought, she had not returned to prove anything to anyone. She had come back to close a chapter, to honor her family, and to show that even in the most difficult circumstances, it was possible to find light. As she packed her bags to return to the big city, Riley looked out the window of the room her parents had prepared for her in the mansion. The afternoon sun illuminated the garden, where Amelia was now planting flowers with a smile on her face. Robert walked across the lawn, appreciating the tranquility he so deserved. Riley felt a deep gratitude for having been able to give them this comfortable and happy life. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: the strength of family love and the resilience of the human spirit could overcome even the most painful injustices. And in that small town, a new story was just beginning, not just for Amelia and Robert, but for Riley too. She knew that wherever she was, she would carry with her the lessons of the past and the certainty that in the end goodness always found a way to prevail. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked it. Also, watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you soon.